In 2014, the choice before the Scottish people was framed by Westminster parties as the strength and stability of the UK on the one hand and the uncertainty of independence on the other. The reality in the years since has been very different.
So I'm a Labour strategist by background, and I was sort of tapped up to run the Better Together campaign. So I was the chief executive. I set up the Better Together campaign, which was the cross-party No campaign in 2014.
We invested all of our money, all of our time, all of our resource, all of our energy in the early part of the campaign to try and find out what people actually thought. And we did it in two stages. So the first stage was we tried to figure out actually where the electorate was. What were the numbers? Which way were people going to vote? And not in a superficial way. We really buried into it to try and find out exactly which way the population was going. 30% of people were, no matter what we said, no matter what we did, were going to vote yes. There was nothing we could do to change their minds. 40% of people, thankfully, a bigger number, were going to vote no. Nothing the Yes campaign could say or do was going to change their mind. They were going to vote no. So the campaign then became about the 30% in the middle. And as a campaigner and as people who work in campaigns, I implore you to always think about how your campaign can impact those people whose minds can be changed, particularly when it comes to politics. We ran our entire campaign for the 30% in the middle. And that was why we won, because we knew that the people whose minds could be changed were the ones who we had to talk to. Uncertainty, we can have the strength, security and the stability of being part of the UK. So the 30% told us, after a huge amount of analytical work and research, that they were going to make their decision based on risk and uncertainty, the risk and uncertainty of leaving the United Kingdom, Scotland leaving the United Kingdom. What does that mean? What will it mean to my pension?
This is the first time we met the phrase Project Fear in the Scottish referendum.
When it comes to voting government, getting government you didn't vote for, I didn't vote for him, but I'm stuck with him. I just accept that's what happens in a democracy. We can use the ruble, we can use the yen, we can use the dollar, we can use the yen, we can use the dollar.
Darling, can't we use the pound anyway?
Of course we can use the pound.
It's not just tax avoidance that is the problem. Ian Taylor was implicated in the Cash for Access scandal, where payments were made in exchange for meetings with the Prime Minister. Vittel has also pleaded guilty for paying surcharges to Saddam Hussein's government to get oil contracts. The company also organised the first controversial sale of Libyan rebel oil in 2011.
So we produced a film, and we produced it quite quickly, actually. and we put it out, and I'm going to show you it now. It's about 2 minutes long, so apologies for the length of the film, but it actually shows you the way that you can dial up one part of your message while still keeping a baseline of the other parts of it as well. So I think there's a film.
Somewhere, tucked away in the North Sea of our planet Earth, there is a small island. Our island. This small island of ours, and the people who live here, are bound together by more than earth and rock. We are bound together by over 300 years of common history, common achievements that measure far beyond our geographical size, and have made us one of the greatest countries on our planet. We are united by the first ever national health service in the world, our health service. We are protected by the strongest defence in Europe. Many of our companies are bound together to give them the global strength to compete in the modern world. Our industries help each other win the orders that are their lifeblood. Our pensioners, our companies, our children's schools, our world-class universities are protected by the resources of the whole island. Together we have built a combined voice, which gives us a space in the very top councils of the world. We are bound together by one of the oldest and strongest currencies in the world. And we are united by the ties of family and friendship with not only the other inhabitants of this small island, but the 500,000 of our fellow Scots who live in other parts of our island. Now, we can still keep this island of ours together and still gain control over all our Scottish taxes and how they are spent. Or we can just cut ourselves off. Do we really want to become an even smaller island in this big, rapidly changing world? Do we really want to cut ourselves off from all that we have built together? Forever. On Thursday, vote no.
Let's look at age, because there's been a fair bit about age, particularly because the poll that was conducted by YouGov and released on referendum day itself had one conclusion about how young people voted, and the Ashcroft poll, which was conducted on referendum day and the day after, had a slightly different conclusion. So this is based on our sample of 4,000 people, and if we look at young people, that's everyone under 30, they were more likely to vote yes, and the most decisive group here is those over the age of 70, 69% of whom were more likely to vote no.
Obviously I'm campaigning for the no vote, better together. You know, the pensioners system that we have at the moment is backed up by 65 million people. If you get independence, we're down to 5.5 million people.
Right.
So both the state pension and the private pensions which people have to take out will have to be funded by that smaller group of people. How are they going to afford this?
That's what I'm saying. But you're that much.
Oh, I know.
You know, there's that much, oh, don't do this and don't do that.
Yeah, I know that.
But I would like to vote yes if it was going to be completely different. You know, because this world at the moment is upside down, as you know.
Yeah. I've got two grandkids growing up, one's university, one's at school and so on. They're going to have children, obviously. I'm not going to risk their future for me. No way.
I know.
So, go and think about that.
I will do.
Think seriously
So
about it. Archie McPherson, and I'm campaigning for the better together, for the no.
Right. Oh, don't phone me.
Oh no, you're looking gorgeous.
If Scotland walks away from the UK, it walks away from the UK pound.
As the campaigns went on, the warnings got darker.
A vote for yes is a huge risk to jobs, to the currency and our national health service.
Am I tough enough? Tough enough? Hell yes, I'm tough enough.
The wall stood 30 feet high, clad in steel armor plating. It followed the line of the ancient Roman frontier 2,000 years before, spanning 80 miles east coast west, cutting Britain in half. Coastal waters were mined and patrolled. The skies were declared a no-fly zone, and orders were given to shoot down any aircraft in violation of the quarantine. The idea was simple. Nobody came out, and nobody went in. They needn't have worried about the second part. Those abandoned within the quarantine zone were left to die. Social order decayed along with the corpses. The streets ran with blood as the people fought to stay alive. The bodies burned in their thousands. Looting, rape and murder became rife. Fire spread as the cities were plundered and the last to die became primal savages, feeding on dogs, rats, and finally on each other. As the weeks turned to months, the funeral pyres faded and died. In time, all the lights burned out, consigning the country north of the wall, first to memory and eventually to history.
On Thursday, vote no.
And it went on, even though many within the no camp didn't think it was working.
It was absolutely appalling. And I was regularly telling George Osborne to stop running a negative campaign, to stop telling the Scots that they were too wee and too poor to run their own affairs, that they couldn't have the pound. It simply wasn't credible. And we started off in that campaign with only 28% supporting independence, and we ended up with 45%.
We could have quite easily ran a campaign for the 40%. It would have made my life a lot easier. I would have had less grey hair. We could have done things that people would have been much more receptive to in terms of our core vote, but we would have lost. We only won because we talked to the 30%. People felt anxious. From our research, we understood that people felt anxious about making a decision of this magnitude. People knew how big a decision it was, and by telling them, don't worry, here's the answer, was very important because it made people feel much more comfortable about voting.
Now, it's still not clear whether, in the end, Project Fear actually worked, whether it tipped enough Scottish voters right at the last moment into sticking with the Union. But it caused an enormous backlash in Scotland, huge resentment and anger. And Project Fear is remembered without a great deal of affection in Scotland to this day.
The strength, security and stability of the UK. Risk and uncertainty.
Not now, Rob.
you don't need to have the risk and uncertainty. You can have the strength, the security and the stability of being part of the United Kingdom.
Spent in Croydon is far more of value to the country from strict utilitarian calculus than a pound spent in Strathclyde.
And we set up Twitter squads. We had these people who were just tweeting aggressively, rebutting points, just getting out there, and had banks of people in our campaign headquarters that as soon as the leader of the Yes campaign said something, they were on it. They were just, oh, that's rubbish, that's nonsense.
At the moment. And it's interesting, I've heard this argument from nationalists that Boris Johnson is going to be leader of the Conservatives. Well, the only way that will happen is if David Cameron loses the next election. So, yes, you need to work out which scare story is it. Is it going to be a Conservative victory at the general election, or is it going to be Boris Johnson as leader of the Conservative Party?
It's inconceivable to you that Boris Johnson might eventually lead the Conservative Party?
I can't imagine that a serious political party would elect Boris Johnson as leader.